get this done. All right, let's get this started. Here we go. People are arriving. So excited to talk about this today. If you can't tell from the image that I used on my screen here to get your clients to move on CMMC compliance. All right, so as we're all rolling in, I just want to do a quick little bit of housekeeping so that everybody knows what to do to get answers and the most out of this time together today. We have my marketing manager, Sarah, on the line with us. Sarah is going to be checking the Q&A section. Everybody can see Q&A along the bottom. If you have a question, please put it there. She's going to continue to check that out throughout the webinar so that we can make sure that all questions get answered. You can use the chat if you want to, but it's possible that I'm not going to see everything in the chat. And if it's really important and we want to answer something, make sure that it goes there in the chat. I'm sorry, make sure it goes into QA if it's something that you really want to make sure it gets answered. Without further ado, we're going to start to get rolling. So if you want to learn how to get your clients to move on CMMC compliance, you're in the right place. So this little guy here in the corner, he's jamming along. You want your clients to be like that, jamming along with CMMC with you? Well, hold on tight. We're going to talk about that. That's right. Today we're going to talk about the secret words to say to get your clients to move on your recommendations. We're going to talk about how to position yourself as the knowledgeable, trusted advisor for CMMC compliance. The official documents that prove that they actually have to be compliant now, not later, like maybe they think, oh, we can just do that later. And how to fairly and profitably price your CMMC services. So I'm looking to see who's here, but and it looks like I know most of you, but in case you ended up here and you have no idea who I am, this is who I am. I'm Leia Shilobod. I'm a certified information security manager. If anyone's on this call and has not taken that certification yet, highly recommend it. It was so much fun to study for. So clearly I am a geek if I just said that my certification was so much fun to study for. I founded my MSP as a security-focused and compliance-focused MSP in 2006. I didn't know how much I loved compliance until 800-171 and CMMC came along. My company is an RPO. I finally was able to get my test scheduled. Thank you, CMMCAB, for finally replying to my emails. So I'll be able to finally take my test when I come back from Israel in a couple weeks. I'm the author of the CMMC IT Documentation Toolkit. We just recently released a documentary called Cybercrime, the Dark Web Uncovered that you can find on Amazon. And I've authored 2 books, Cyber Warfare and The 3 Indisputable Rules. So quick disclaimer. I'm telling you guys right now what's been working for my company, what I've discovered over time from doing this work, this kind of specific work for 5 years. And after hundreds of hours of study learning, literally thousands of trial and errors, I'm going to tell you things that worked for me really, really well. You can take my advice. You make lots of money from it. You can tell me that you think that it's stupid. I don't really care. I'm here to tell you everything that has worked for me and from my perspective, from listening to lots of really smart people, implementing their ideas, testing it, see what works. So that's just my whole disclaimer on this. So let's get rolling. If you're here, you probably know what CMMC is, but let's go ahead and for new people, give a quick recap. CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. That's what CMMC stands for. If you're on this call, you probably already know that. However, if you're also on this call, you probably know there's tons of people you've talked to that don't know that. It's a required cybersecurity requirement for contractors dealing with federal contract information and or controlled and classified information. And the model is based on basic to advanced cybersecurity practices at 3 different levels. And really what it's meant to be is a cybersecurity compliance program, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. And because it's a compliance program, it is a journey, not a destination. What it is not. CMMC is not wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, to make a quick buck. If you're on this call today, and that's the way that you see this, I really hope that by the end of this call, you change your mind about what this is and become more purpose and mission driven about the change that this can really bring to an organization. It's not an infrastructure upgrade. Like if you're an MSP that's here and you're like, all you see is remediation, that's not what CMMC is. CMMC is not GCC high. CMMC is not anything in a box. Anywhere you see anything like, oh, CMMC in a box, oh, just buy my solution and you're compliant. That's not what CMMC is either. CMMC is not a tool set. It's also not something that a company can outsource or set and forget. That is why they need you. So I want to tell you quickly, really quick, just like how we ended up needing to figure out what CMMC was and how to figure out how to implement it. So we specialize, my MSP specializes in working with manufacturers. So way back in 2016, we got wind of this thing called NIST 800-171. And I was like, okay, all right, there's some numbers and some letters. Welcome to IT. I was asked to learn about it by our local MSP to speak to manufacturers in my area about that requirement. So I was like, okay, I can do that. All right. But I recognized after I was really diving deep into it, it was really, like, it felt like it was easy to understand the controls. Like, I get what this means. And then I'm trying to implement it and I'm like, so what does this control actually look like in real life? And then what actually is satisfactory if I'm going to meet this control? Lots of trial and error there to try to figure that out. And then what made it even better was pushback from clients to implement, right? Especially fun things like MFA onto the network, right? Lots of pushback there. So ended up that I had 100% failure rate of full implementation of the controls, which is interesting because as DoD and DIBCAC goes through and does their own assessment of contractors and their implementation of 800-171, this is actually their same result, 100% failure rate of full implementation of controls across contractors. I recognize that there had to be some kind of requirement to assure implementation, because I mean, if you get that kind of pushback, and I heard things like, oh, the CMMC police going to show up? Is someone going to say, oh, I need to look at this stuff? And I said, not right now, but this is a contractual requirement. I'm pretty sure at some point there's going to be some kind of accountability. Clients were looking for us for help when that happened and CMMC came along. So I had to figure out, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to actually implement this? And not only how are we going to implement it effectively, but how are we going to replicate it across all the different clients? So let's start at the beginning. At the beginning, I didn't really know anything about this NIST thing. When my MEP called me and said, please present this, I jumped on it. I was like, I'm absolutely going to speak to these manufacturers, but I literally had zero idea what 800-171 was. So guess what I did? RTFM, baby. I learned this from Mark Cuban, and this is one of the smartest things I ever learned from this man. Does anybody know what RTFM stands for? Raise your hand or put it somewhere. What's RTFM? Anybody know? Oh, some people know. These smart people. Yes. Yeah, this man is so smart. Read the fucking manual. Yeah, this is what you do. So what manual? Every single freaking document we could get our hands on. What was that? That's this stuff. Yes, I've read all of these things. Actually, I read more than these things. And if you haven't read these yet and you're on the call, I highly recommend that you read them. The DFARS clauses that surround this, the NIST special publications that are related to the requirements here. And for those of you that were wondering why 800-53, this one is on here. 800-53 is the control set from which 800-171 was derived from, and it's referenced often. So that's why I read that one too. This one, I forget how many pages it is. Like, I don't know, 145 pages. It's so short. You think it's long, it's so short. This one, if you print it out, it's like 450 pages front and back. So it's kind of overwhelming, but it's awesome. So after we read all of those things, guess what we discovered? We discovered requirements. What requirements are those? Well, the first one is the FAR, 52.204-21, Basic Safeguarding of Covered Contractor Information Systems. That's a requirement. Then the 7012 clause, 252.204-7012, Safeguarding Covered Defense Information and Cyber Incident Reporting. The 7019 clause and the 7020 clause, which point to 800-171 controls. And then the A document, which was assessing it that you've done that properly. And the False Claims Act, which is also an official act that helps us recognize that all of these things are related. All of these things are current requirements. If you are anywhere in the defense industrial base, something here is going to apply to you, or many of these somethings is going to apply to you. Let's break it down. Right? So I want you guys to pay attention to this, because all of these things are required right now. The FAR 52.204.21 clause, safeguarding of covered contract or information systems, is required for all federal contracts, not just DoD. I also want you all to think about this as we continue through this, all federal contracts, right? Oh, what did I do here? Here we go. It details 50 basic safeguards. Sorry, 15. And the interesting thing is, like, a couple of this is like, I mean, for how long and how much I've bathed in this information, these controls, a couple of months when I said, oh my God, I was today years old when I saw those 15, and I'm like, familiar. And I'm like, wait a second. And I matched them up with the controls in 800-171. And I'm like, oh my God, there they are. And that's CMMC level 1. Oh my gosh, like blinding flash of the obvious. That's okay. I'll admit to the rest of you how stupid I was when I finally figured that out and was today years old. And the rest of you can just say, oh yeah, I knew that forever. However, this is interesting, right? All federal contracts, 15 controls, 15 basic safeguards, CMMC level 1 required. And then we have the 7012 clause. What's required right now? Right now, if 7012 is in their contract. If the organization processes, stores, or transmits CUI, they have to have an incident response plan and test it. They have to report those incidents within 72 hours. They have to have a medium assurance certificate to report incidents. They need to implement the 800-171 controls. And they need to only use FedRAMP moderate baseline CSPs if the CUI is hosted elsewhere, have an SSP, and flow down those requirements to any subcontractor that they grant access to the CUI. Hey, Trish. Could you bring Joanne to the door for me? I'm really sorry. I'm delivering a weapons here. Thank you. Thank you. So what else we got? We have 7019, which is basically also, it's like kind of commingled with 7020 if you really read it together. That's the notice of NIST 800-171 DoD assessment requirements. What is that? So it talks about the basic, moderate, and high assessments that are required. So we have some programs where you have to be assessed by the DoD, by DIBCAC. But everyone that has a requirement for 800-171 has to at least self-assess themselves for the implementation of the 800-171 controls. This is a requirement. This is not like, I have to do it when CMMC comes out. It's now. And then you need to enter that score for your basic assessment into the SPRS portal. And you also have to know when your POAM, all those things that you did, that you said are out of alignment, when is that going to be completed? So what happens then if a contractor accepts a contract and says, you know what? That's awesome that you think that I should be doing this, and that, who's going to check on me right now? What's going to happen? Well, you're subject to the False Claims Act. There's the information about that. What is the False Claims Act? This is about any federal contract, guys. This is not just about DoD. This is any federal contract. The Acting Assistant Attorney General Boynton actually said, ensuring that citizens' tax dollars are protected from fraud and abuse is among the department's top priorities. The False Claims Act is one of the most important tools available to the department, both to deter and to hold accountable those who seek to misuse public funds. This is definitely something that some of the people that we work with are not seeing and understanding. And that is that this money originates, even if they are working with someone who is a private company, whether, they are a tier 2 supplier, tier 3 supplier, or way down, and they're working with someone else in private industry. The fact of the matter is that these dollars came from the federal government. These are public funds. These are taxpayer dollars, and they're just getting flowed down through the defense industrial base. This is public funds, and because of that, it is subject to False Claims Act. All right, okay. Wait, here it is. This is the second one. There we go. Interesting thing about False Claims Act is that contractor fraud is a very common type of False Claims Act case. Whistleblowers can report contractors who defraud the government through bribes, kickbacks, or false certifications of compliance to win government contracts. Defense contractor fraud is the most common type of contractor fraud. So it's not like this is like, oh, I'm going to scare you with this, False Claims Act thing. It is actually the most common type of contractor fraud that whistleblowers call on. And the contract compliance violations, like false certification of regulatory or statutory clients, result in many of these False Claims Act cases. When I was at the CIC conference, that's a CMMC implementation conference in San Diego back in January, I was talking to lots of really smart people, and I was told that with false claims that they can fine the organization up to $20,000 per invoice for anything that they're invoicing that is like they've been invoicing something that's attached to some sort of false claim. Of course, like I kind of tongue in cheek and trying to make a joke said, oh, so what we learn here is to make sure that you issue no invoices for less than $20,000. I mean, that's a silly thing to say, clearly, because it doesn't make sense to that organization. But if you want to put that into perspective, if this is the risk that you are allowing your organization to have by issuing a false claim. Matt asks, so if a manufacturer is saying they aren't worried about compliance because they go through a distributor like Raytheon, that would be an inaccurate viewpoint, correct? You're correct. If they have a contract, especially if they have a contract with another organization that's in the DoD supply chain, if they are performing on work for a defense contract of any kind, then they need to get clarification about what it is that they're providing and what kind of information that they are receiving. Are they receiving federal contract information or CUI? And then they have to assure that they're doing either those 15 basic safeguards, if it's just FCI, or the 110 controls and 800-171. Now, if they are receiving CUI in any way, are we receiving CUI and FCI? That's a whole, that's a huge present. I could do like a whole series on that, but we're not going to talk about that today. But absolutely 100%, they should be asking a lot of questions to clarify right now to make sure they're doing the right thing. And what I want to especially talk about when it comes to like this sidestepping the requirements and the whistleblower clause, I want you to raise your hand if anyone that you've ever worked with is like, oh, but I trust my people. They would never do this, right? And maybe, yeah, right. Yeah, you don't know. You have no idea what kind of stressors other people have. If they've fallen on hard times, if they have stress in their marriage, if they decided that they were going to buy a house or a car that suddenly I can't afford this anymore. They're going to change jobs. How easy is it if you decide that you're going to change jobs anyway to just say, you know what? I happen to know that my company reported a 110 score in SPRS, but they are not compliant. They get a paycheck. They get a freaking paycheck and immunity. They can't be touched, and they're walking out the door. Like, most of us want to say that people won't do that, but I'm sure we've all heard stories that people freaking do that. People really care mostly about themselves and not that company. They're leaving. So what do? You show up with guns blazing. Hey, you have to do these things. I have all the documentation you need. And actually, this is actually what I think about when I think about like coming in with guns blazing. Anybody else here a fan of The Matrix? Right? This part, like my absolute favorite part of besides the spoon part where he the little kid bends the spoon and he's like, to know the truth, there is no spoon. This is my second favorite part where they're like, they come into the lobby with guns blazing. They're like, we're going to get shit done. Right.
Would you please remove any metallic
I don't recommend that's what you do in this particular case. Oh, hang on a second. Here we go. Ready?
Holy shit. Oh.
Sorry, I love it. So don't do that if you actually want to establish rapport and close your sale. So what are some things that you actually could do? I recommend Vossing them using technical empathy. Anybody else here familiar with Chris Voss? If you are not, I highly recommend that you follow him. All right, Mike. Yeah, Matt. Yeah, there we go. So Chris is amazing. He wrote a book, Never Split the Difference. Follow him on social media. You get all kinds of tips and tricks all the time. Read his book, Never Split the Difference, and use tactical empathy. So what's tactical empathy? It's becoming very aware of their perception and understanding their viewpoint and their emotions. This is going to be hard for us, right? Because we're so freaking passionate about what it is that we do and we have all the knowledge now. Like, I know all the stuff you're supposed to be doing, and it's driving me absolutely nuts because you don't listen. And the things that they say that sound like, damn it, like, don't you know that you have to do this? You don't have a choice. And, you know, like all the excuses, it can get really frustrating, but don't be frustrated. Take a deep breath and understand their mindset, their feelings, and make them feel understood. You don't have to agree with someone to make them feel understood. Chris says, listening is a martial art, balancing the subtle behaviors of emotional intelligence and assertive skills of influence to gain access to the mind of another person. So I want you guys to actually tell me some of the things, like, tell me, what do you hear? Tell me, what do they say? Actually, you know, put it in chat. I told you not to use the chat. And here I am breaking my own rules. Welcome to my world. What do they say to you? Have you heard things like, I don't understand why I have to do this. It's so expensive. I don't know how I'm going to afford this. I don't trust what X is saying. And that could be anyone. I don't trust what my MSP is saying. Oh, chat is disabled. All right, that's fine. Put it in the Q&A then. Here we go. Thank you. Oh, sweet. You guys, oh, look at that. All right. I don't trust what X is saying. X could be, I don't trust what my MSP is saying. I don't trust what my consultant's saying. I don't trust what someone's saying. I already spent so much money, time, effort with my MSP going to GCC High. I don't want this to happen again. Here we go. We asked the client directly, do they not believe they need to be compliant? Any recommendation? Okay, they do not believe they have to be compliant. Yep, absolutely. That's something they say. We don't think this applies to us. Oh, yeah, Mike, Giovanni, yeah. When will we have a 110 score? A small business, doesn't apply to us. We'll get to it eventually. Final rule isn't out yet. That means that we don't have to do anything. Leadership has not bought into the program yet. Oh my gosh, look at this. Look, you guys are so smart. Look at this. CMMC keeps changing. Oh, CMMC is being pushed back another year anyway. CMMC has been so fluid. I'm just going to wait. Yes. So I can see raised hands. Raise your hand if you see all those things and it annoys the living crap out of you or it makes your blood boil. Yes. Yes. So if you're going to be like Neo and Trinity and you're going to walk into the lobby with your freaking guns blazing, they're not going to listen to you. You have to get into their minds. You have to understand where they are. And you have to validate the feelings that they have right now. Because you want to know what? That is the way they feel. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong or indifferent. It doesn't even freaking matter. You have to validate where they are right now. I don't understand why I have to do this. Hang on a second. I don't understand why I have to do this. Okay, so it sounds like there's all this information coming at you and it's very confusing and you're feeling like it's just another thing that you have to do. Does that sound right? Yes, that's right. That establishes rapport. All you did is validate the way they feel right now. It's so expensive. I don't know how I'm going to afford this. It sounds like you've looked into a lot of different solutions and they look like it's going to cost your company a lot of money and you're trying to figure out how this is going to bring value to your company. Does that sound right? Yes, that's right. You're always looking for the that's right. I don't trust what X is saying. So it sounds like you had some people telling you that you have to move to GCC High and you're not sure if that's going to be right for your company because it costs a lot of money. Is that right? Yes, that's right. This is what you should be saying every single time you're sitting with a prospect, a new client, or an existing client, and you hear these kinds of things. You repeat what it is you think you're saying. It sounds like, right? Is that right? And you're looking for a that's right. Or they'll tell you that you're wrong, and then they'll tell you what they actually are feeling. And then you repeat what you think they're feeling until you get the that's right. Does that make sense, guys? You want that empathy. You want them to trust you. This is how you become a trusted advisor. So And some other things for us to consider when you're establishing yourself as that trusted advisor. The first one is ego versus ego strength. There's a difference between the two. Somebody that is egotistical is often seen as, or could also be another thing here could be like arrogant. If you have if you're like full of ego, you could say you're very arrogant. Here, let me just double check and make sure I don't have anyone on the call here that I'm going to be talking about. No, it does not appear that. That's good. Okay. So recently, I did sit with, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who also owns an MSP, who says he does the CMMC stuff and who also thinks very highly of himself. And so we're talking about what we're doing, and he's like, oh, maybe we could work together, which is usually a veiled, entree into seeing if they want to buy my business. Sorry, my friend, I'm building an empire. And then he's talking about working together with CMMC. And so I asked him a couple of questions, and he's saying things like this. Oh, well, I'm trying to get this stuff done, but they keep saying things like he's saying all of this. And, he's saying everything that you guys are saying here, all this stuff, he's saying these things, but he's not saying it as I can't believe the client doesn't get it. He's actually saying it as more like he buys into these excuses, which, but he's so good at CMMC, and he should probably partner. I should probably partner with him because his people are very good at this. Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing. That's ego, right? If you come in there and you try to this ego sell of, I know what I'm talking about, you just have to listen to me. That's arrogance. You can get so far with arrogance. You absolutely can. This man has built a fair-sized company, not a massive company, probably won't, but he's built a fair-sized company doing that. Ego strength is different. Ego strength is, I can get it done. Give it to me, I will get it done. So I want you to think about the difference between those two things. Do not be ego. I know what I'm talking about. Be ego strength. I will get it done. Whatever we have here to do in this program, I'll figure out a way to make this work for you. I'll figure out a way to make it affordable. We'll figure out a way to implement. We'll figure out a way to get you to pass the assessment. That's ego strength. Another way to establish yourself as a trusted advisor is to demonstrate industry and compliance knowledge. Do that in a non-arrogant way. And you do that by dropping a whole bunch of things in here and in your conversations to show that you know what you're talking about. By doing that on LinkedIn. And make sure, guys, if you're posting on LinkedIn, please remember your audience. If you really want to reach OSCs, don't talk in an echo chamber that the rest of us can just say, oh yeah, Bob is so smart in this, and we're all the same people. Put it in a way that that OSCs, your end client, are actually going to it's going to speak to them. Think in that way, and demonstrate industry knowledge for manufacturers, labs, whoever it is that you're working with, and compliance knowledge. You also establish yourself as a trusted advisor by having a very strong network. That can sort of be counterintuitive for some of us that are rugged individualists and have that I can do it ego strength. They're well, I can do it, and I have to have all the information. You can't always have all the information. You can't always have all of the skills. When you have a wide network of C3PAOs that you trust to know, assessors, other CCPs, other RPs, RPOs, when the attorneys in this industry, when the other OSCs that are very vocal in the industry and have already implemented this or passed a DIPCAC audit, when those people, and then that if you don't have the answer, that you can find it, that makes your clients really sticky to you. I can't tell you how many times I'm on a consult call with one of my clients, risk management meeting, talking about some things we have to do for compliance. And they asked me a question about whether or not something would be met. And I just like brought up Signal and started to message one of my assessor friends on there. I'm like, hang on a second, let me check with my assessor friend. You know, like, I don't have to have the answer. I can say, hey, I can go grab it for you real quick from these people that I know, like, and trust, who are part of my network. That's huge. And the solutions you have access to also establish you as a trusted advisor. And that could be cybersecurity solutions, that could be compliance solutions of any kind. But those also help you to be to position yourself as a trusted advisor. Mike also said when we're talking about communicating with the client and tactical empathy, he had said that it also follows the lines of conscious communications as defined by Dr. Eric Eisenberg and Sean Mahar, hope I'm saying that right, in their book, Stop Wasting Words. I'm going to stick that over here so you guys can see that, because I'm telling you, like, I'm a voracious learner. So I love to be able to have resources to have more ideas. So that looks like it's another book. I'll probably read that, Mike. Okay, I'm going to ask Mark, I'm going to answer your question in a little bit. So what do you charge? So first you have to figure out what are you delivering. Maybe you're delivering gap assessments, POAM management, remediation, documentation, GRC tool, program management, security tool sets, training and awareness, SecOps, MSP services. What do you want to deliver? But then you have to think to yourself, all right, so am I going to deliver a checklist for compliance? In other words, am I just going to deliver stuff? Is that what I'm delivering, stuff? Or delivering value? Because stuff is commoditized and value is not. People pay money for value. Even cheap people, or people who are perceived as cheap, will pay money for something that is presented as value. So what is the difference? So here's the stuff. This is stuff. This is value. Do not deliver a checklist. Refuse to deliver a checklist. So Nick Sonnenberg, in his book, Come Up for Air, which I highly recommend for all organizations, talks about how mature organizations create processes from regular projects. So a lot of people that I see CMMC or any kind of compliance, you're an IT person, you think, I've got a project here, I've got a remediation project, I've got a POAM. The POAM is my project. I have to close this project of closing all these POAM items. But any kind of compliance is a journey, and a journey has to be a series of regular processes. So if the organization wants to be mature and have like something that is really valuable, it has to be processitized and not just projectized. And this is a good formula for you to remember. Checklist approaches equal poor organizational transformation and adoption plus great costs. And I don't mean like low cost, I mean big cost. So the value here is to implement a cybersecurity compliance program that identifies and reduces organizational risk. And it answers the question, how are we spending our money and our time, and is it in the right place? When you do that, you're going to do 10x the value. And this is the key. You tell your clients, you're going to be doing all of this work anyway. If you're going to be doing a whole lot of work, why don't you get the maximum value out of it? If you just want me to go down and click all these boxes on the checklist and you're going to spend lots of time and lots of money, why don't we just do a little bit more? Just a little bit more. And we can have 10x the value for the entire organization by implementing a cybersecurity compliance program and make sure that the money we are spending is in the right place to get the most value to the organization. How does that sound, guys? And the thing is that when you price things and do things from a value perspective, you can price it higher. When you bring value to a company, you can charge higher fees. And your price offering is based on what you're able to deliver to your client. It's no longer commoditized. So use this formula to become a sought-after CMMC expert. OSCs will know that if they come to you, they have a proven process to not only implement and maintain a cybersecurity compliance program, but then also to get compliant and stay compliant. Your leads, I'm telling you, if you explain to people this, that you have this proven process and that you're bringing value to the organization and position yourself as a trusted advisor, your leads go from a few a month, if you're getting that, to a bunch a week, because people are really looking for help on this. They are tired of wasting money. I don't know how many of you know this, but I've recently taken over as the host of Dib Tech Talks podcast. So I'm getting right now to talk to a lot of OSCs, and this is something that they tell me all the time. Like, I'm so tired of wasting money on this thing. I just want somebody who's going to give me the right answers, where I put my money in the right place. And they said, I've gone back to management and I said, we have to do this. And then we implemented this money. And then now they're like, oh, well, these things are changing and these things are changing. Yes, it's cybersecurity compliance. It's always going to change. They were sold the wrong thing from the get-go. They're looking for someone to make sense of this for them. Make it be you. And when you do that, organizations line up to co-market or create programs with you. I mean, I was approached what seemed to me to be like out of the blue to host Dib Tech Talks, an existing podcast. Why? Because I'm out there talking about it all the time and I'm making a lot of sense. People really want to work with you when you have a proven process and you make sense. I'm going to say this really quick. I say this on just about every single call where I talk to other MSPs or MSSPs or solutions providers. And that is, please do not try this without a GRC tool. I don't know how many of you have experienced this before. When you start with a new client and you say, okay, well, where are you in your process? And they try to tell you, I'm like, so are you using a GRC tool? No. Okay. So it's like everything kind of like in spreadsheets. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay, so how well is that managed? It's not. That's because it's really hard to manage in spreadsheets. If you happen to be like an Access or Excel whiz, and then you can create spreadsheets that do amazingly magical things and link things together, and make it really easy to be able to manage this. God bless you. And I think that's awesome. I'm not that person. And a GRC tool is really, really helpful for me to manage and maintain the compliance. I've personally vetted and tested out many. Right now, FutureFeed is the one that is the leader. However, I've been working with another GRC vendor, and I think he's on the call. Yep, he is. Awesome. So I've been working with another GRC vendor who is actively trying to be a, hang on a second. Who's actively trying to come into this space and do an awesome job. In fact, I'm on his advisory committee, and I'll be traveling to Israel to see him on Saturday. So I highly recommend that you check out these tools because you really, really, really need to make sure that you have a good tool that is going to be able to help you to manage this compliance. There's tons of tools out there, and a lot of them do not do a very good job, but they say that they do because obviously everybody wants to take your money. You want to make sure you're working with somebody who is going to listen to how we have to manage it. Right now, both of these vendors listen to me, and that's why I endorse them, because they ask me specifically, how can I make this easier for you? So you want to do this too? You can definitely do this on your own. You can continue to listen to me on LinkedIn. You can keep coming up here. But if you want me to, I can teach you how to implement. We did create an implementation and coaching program. You have access to all the documentation that we created. That is a how to implement and maintain a cybersecurity compliance program for CMMC. It includes IT security policies, plans, template procedures, and a bunch of other stuff to help you to do that. If you decide to join the program, we also make sure you get clarity on the controls, what they look like in real life. You get accountability to actually build your program, sell it, get policies, plans, and procedures implemented for your clients. We have a group mindshare of really, really smart people that make us all better. We have SMEs that join the calls for perspective and knowledge transfer. Actually, we just had a call a couple hours ago. Then we had an OSC join and talk to us about specifically what the cap is looking like right now, fresh information from that, what to expect for getting prepared, what kind of evidence they're looking for, things of that nature. And we get to talk about a lot of wins because people are closing business. If you are on this call, it's unlikely that you recognize there's an opportunity here. I got the chance to talk to Fred Vicola, the CEO of Kaseya. I really don't care what you think about Kaseya. He's a smart man who's running $1 billion company. What's the biggest trend MSPs should be paying attention to right now? Compliance is coming. So remember earlier when I was saying that the FAR clause, those 15 requirements for any federal contract is essentially that 15 controls in 800-171 and essentially what CMMC level 1 is right now. It's coming, guys. The rest of the federal government is looking at CMMC that the DoD is doing as this experiment, this great experiment. It's going to pass. The rulemaking process right now is just how long it takes for the government to do anything. It's the government. This is normal. It takes a long time. But once this happens and the program is stood up, all the other departments that also have FCI and CUI are going to be adopting the same darn thing. And we will be best prepared and positioned to be able to do this work for all those other organizations too, if you so choose. So learn it, replicate it, learn how to create the cybersecurity compliance program for your clients, replicate the approach, apply it to other compliance requirements if you want to, or even insurance requirements. Pull those into this too. Make the program make sense for your client for the most value. And actually, there are actually MSPs and other IT consultants that are in our program that don't even offer CMMC compliance at all. Just because if you know how to implement a cybersecurity compliance program, then you can do anyone, because it's all about recognizing what is the control set, how do you create a cadence, what's the documentation that's to support this, and how do you bring that security culture into an organization. So what do you do now? So do it, guys. Build the program, offer it to the companies that truly need it. They need you. They need us. Next week, you can come and learn how to implement a CMMC compliance service as a service offering, because I can tell you exactly what we did for that. You can learn all my secrets. And if you want to, I'd love for you guys to join the rest of the cool kids in the CMMC Toolkit Coaching and Implementation Program. It's a lot of fun. And there's really smart people on this call and in this community. If you're interested in that, you can go to www.itdoctoolkit.com and check it out today. And if not, I'll see you all next week, and I'm sure I'll see you all around LinkedIn. Any final questions before we close today? All right, thank you, Michael, for sending us a link to Stop Wasting Words. Love it. All right, Mike Moran, you have a question? It is recorded, and everybody all attendees will get a link to the recording. And Mike, do you have a question?
Nope, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. My pleasure.
We'll be chatting
Because
soon.
yeah. All right, guys. You know where to find me, and we're gonna have the slides and the recording sent out to everybody that was here today. And we're going to kick it because this community needs all of us to secure the defense industrial base. So thank you for showing up. Catch you around.